So you've sort of systematically applied this approach to getting more happiness, freedom, and fulfillment in your life. So I thought we could dive into that a little bit here and sort of flesh that out a little bit.
Unsurprisingly, I sort of said, okay, well, there must be some kind of like standard operating procedure I can apply.
Yeah.
And
there's got to be a recipe to this, right?
Yeah, you know, some process I can fill out.
You're listening to The Growth Booth, the show focused on achieving lifestyle freedom through online businesses. Whether you're looking for step-by-step strategies to start building an online business, simple game plans to grow your business, or proven lifestyle freedom frameworks, you are in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the thousands of listeners already in growth mode.
Hayden Booth here, welcome back to episode number 13 of The Growth Booth, where today we are joined once again by my business partner, Steve Clayton, and we are going to be building on what we discussed in episode 12, which was an episode all about lifestyle design. If you haven't checked that one out, head over to thegrowthbooth.com, go to episode number 12, and you'll be able to find some good stuff that we spoke about there. In this episode, though, I want to take it a little bit further and start talking about how people can get to sort of by design, a place where they are really happy with what they're doing in their lives. And I know, Steve, you've someone who lives by the spreadsheet, and unsurprisingly, you've actually built out a bit of a framework that you use in your life. So you've sort of systematically applied this approach to getting more happiness, freedom, and fulfillment in your life. So I thought we could dive into that a little bit here and sort of flesh that out a little bit. So where do we start here? Like, what are the areas that you like to look at?
Yeah, it's kind of silly. I mean, I'm kind of a weird paradox. You know, I'm sort of a very introspective guy, and sort of I've always been kind of like a frustrated writer, and sort of like an artsy kind of in that way. But I'm also kind of like a numbers guy, a scientific planner, that sort of thing. So when I think about this being introspective about what is happiness and how do you get to happiness, what I call what's your recipe for happiness. Unsurprisingly, I sort of said, okay, well, there must be some kind of like standard operating procedure I can apply. Yeah. And
there's got to be a recipe to this, right?
Yeah, some process I can fill out. So I probably have thought about this like way more than anyone else I know, because I don't know exactly why. It's just kind of how I'm wired. I'm constantly sort of saying, am I satisfied? Am I happy? Am I? And I think the other thing is that I'm able to step outside of myself and others and look around and kind of see that there's a lot of people that are operating, what I call just on autopilot, and have never really done the work of introspection to sort of sit down and say, well, what really makes me happy, and why the hell, and why am I not doing that? And I just see so many people who live a life of basically unhappiness. And, there's always an excuse, oh yeah, I'd love to live somewhere warmer, but, my job's here, my family's here. And some of them are reasonable excuses, and, but some of them aren't. And at the very least, you should make a firm decision and not just let it happen to you, So anyway, so I think that the secret to happiness, if you think about it, is pretty straightforward. It's like, hey, what are the things you love to do? You should do more of those things. What are the things you don't like to do? You shouldn't do any of those things. You should probably help others do that same thing. Help others do the things they love to do. Help others avoid what they don't like. Rinse and repeat, and sort of reassess that. And you're done. It sounds pretty easy, but I think so why don't people do that? And I think that the reasons are that people don't ask themselves the questions. They don't have a framework for doing that. They don't know how to be introspective, and they don't know, they feel like, without even having an answer of what makes them happy, they feel like it's impossible to structure their life in such a way that they could do more of the things that make them happy and less of the things that don't make them happy. So I think that's what I see. So what I struggled to do is I said, all right, look, let's think about what are the areas that are important to dive into to make sure that you're living your best life, living your happiness. And I kind of break it down by geography, your health and wellness, your family and friends, work, and then kind of everything else, hobbies, passions, interests, that sort of thing. And I like to sort of examine each of those things individually and understand, first of all, before even worrying about putting a plan in place, just kind of understand, well, what makes me happy? What of those areas, like for geography, what would make me happy every day? Where should I live that would make me happy every day? That kind of thing.
Is that how you got to spending, a certain portion of your time, by the beach, another portion of your time, at your house in South Carolina, another portion of your time at, Chicago? Is that basically the outcome of going through that exercise?
Yeah, it is. And it changes, and that's okay. But yeah, for us, our recipe for geography is we love the city. We love Chicago. And we love the lifestyle of the city, where you don't have a car and you can go out to a really nice restaurant and take an Uber and not have to worry about having wine with dinner and, walk down the street and go into high-end shopping and, that sort of thing. So we love all the culture and all the urban stuff. But on the other hand, there are things that I miss when I'm spending all my time in Chicago. Like, that I like sports cars. Well, sports cars are kind of a tough thing to have in Chicago. I don't have any in Chicago. And I went through a period of about four or 5 years where I didn't own a car at all. And I missed it, So then, so we've got the urban lifestyle, which we love, but then we also love this, low country Hilton Head lifestyle, the weather. It's much more temperate here. Obviously, it doesn't usually snow here ever. It doesn't usually get below freezing, and golf and all that sort of, and the wide open spaces and the different geography. And then I've always loved the water and the beach. And I have mostly satisfied that itch with a boat. But I kind of reached the point where I was sort of done with that. And so now I have a place in Florida that's on the beach. And so that's how we get our beach fix.
And do you sort of regularly or semi-regularly sort of sit down and go through these 5 categories, which I think you said were geography, health, wellness, friends, family, work, sort of hobbies, interests, and everything else? Do you regularly make that an exercise to go through it once in a while?
I do. I probably too much, because you can do it a little too much. I think I do it a lot on geography, because as you know, I've kind of, since I've known you, right? I've lived full-time in North Carolina. I've lived full-time in Key West. I've lived, full-time in Chicago. And then I've lived in this split scenario. And then sometimes I've had a boat, which I've treated like a floating condo, all sorts of different places in actually sometimes out of the country and in the Bahamas and stuff like that. So I do the geography thing a lot. But I've slowed down on that. I mean, like it's been like maybe 3 years since I've been in this cycle of these 3 places. I think I've kind of found, and I'm getting older too. So, but I think I've sort of found my sweet spot. It's a great sweet spot of being able to, I'm tired of suburbia and having to get in a car and drive to go get milk. All right, well, let's just, jump over to Chicago for a long weekend or something and, enjoy that. So yeah, but to answer the question specifically, yes, I think it's important to do it regularly. I think for geography, probably people shouldn't do it as often as I do it. But maybe, kind of a once a year check-in is probably a pretty good thing to do, just to make sure that you're still, because things change. Your recipe for happiness today is clearly not going to be the recipe for happiness in 5 years. I mean, it just isn't. Things change, interests change, your health changes, that sort of thing. So
I think a lot of people just get, on autopilot. I think you mentioned that earlier. And, 1 year goes by, another year goes by, but you never stop to sort of ask yourself the question. And I think when you do stop to ask yourself the question about, what would make me really happy with regards to my family and my friends, right, and, where do I want to be for that? That's when you can even start to think a little bit outside the square, because if you don't live in the same place as your family, but you want to see them regularly, like in my case, I live in Argentina most of the time. I've got the rest of my family on my side is in New Zealand. Now, there's different ways I can see them. One is I could go to New Zealand. Another is I could fly them, out to see me. And then when they do that, I actually have a really good setup here where I've got a place they can stay.
Right.
And, everything else is all sort of set up. So I think when you really start to sort of think outside the square a little bit, there's a lot that you can do to make yourself happier in those categories. One thing that I know you've started doing this year, Steve, and it's probably because you've sort of been rebalancing, I guess, the different areas, is not working on a Friday. So on Friday, you want to, get out on the golf course or spend time with your friends and family or something. Whereas in the past, maybe you wanted to be working, but I guess this is the outcome of just rebalancing those things. I guess over time that changes.
Yeah, that's a great example. It's something I definitely decided on, and it just made sense for me, and it's made a difference. I don't always make it, but I do often enough. So it works out really, really well for me, and it's made a big difference in my quality of life.
Well, what's the process that you sort of go through to flesh out these things that are important? Like, what do you have an example of some questions that you would ask yourself around, I don't know, hobbies, interest, passion, or is there, like, how do you sort of get to where you ultimately want to be with deciding on what you want to do and don't do?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I think each of these areas has, some of them are easier than others, right? I mean, like health and wellness, I guarantee you most people know what they should be doing, but they just don't do it. Women are better at this than men, but just getting someone who can sit down and say, all right, you need these screening tests, you need this, you need to be at the right, BMI, cholesterol, blood pressure, all that kind of crap. So that's maybe, it's not the easiest one to do, but it's it's one of the easier ones to plan. Family and friends, I think that you probably need to start to dig a little bit deeper. Like, for example, are there friends or family that you think of often that you don't see? Are there friends maybe on Facebook from your past that you wish you could have more of a relationship with? Do you have, too much of a relationship with some of your family? I guess it's not just a matter of like sitting down and going, oh, well, who are the closest family to me? I better move near them. That's not what we mean here. It's really digging deep and asking, several layers of questions deep to sort of ferret out. Gosh, yeah, it would be great to be able to have more of a relationship with my best friend from high school. I'm actually struggling a little bit with that right now and just trying to figure out how to make that better. He's best man at my wedding, and we don't see each other as often as I'd like by any stretch. And so we're both trying to sort of figure out ways to, make that better. I guess, but if I were to be given the task of, we'll write down all the family you need to be close to or something, that wouldn't have come up. So you need to ask those questions. I think oftentimes there are a lot of passions that go unrecognized. So if we shift gears and talk about hobbies, passions, interests, that sort of thing, I find that there are a lot of things that people got involved in as kids, like maybe in 3rd to 9th grade, that kind of a time frame, that are true passions.
You were like building your own casino at that stage, weren't you?
Well, yes, I was, but yeah, that's one passion.
You're not like so a gaming mogul anymore.
Not so much gambling, but the entrepreneurial side to it, But the other thing I was doing at that age was I was doing a lot of writing. And like a lot of writing, and I had written a whole series of adventures for our class that our teacher would allow me to read, to the class, and it was kind of fun because everybody had characters, and so. But then I forgot all about that, and it was like a big thing. Like I was like a big author in my 6th grade. I was infamous for this, and it was a real passion for me, and I really loved it. And then I forgot about it for, I don't know, 30, 40 years, you know, something like that, whatever old you are in sixth grade. And then through this process, I kind of circled back into it and said, you know, I really want to rekindle some of those passions that were really important to me back then, like writing. And so, you know, as you know, I got involved in writing a screenplay and a movie that's actually out there. And I have an IMDb credit for co-writing a screenplay and that sort of stuff. And also flying was a big thing for me. So, you know, many decades later, I went back and got my pilot's license and flew for many years. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of unrecognized passions that we had back then that would make our lives better if we could rekindle that passion.
I think if you try to take that idea and build it into something that's systematic in your life, one example that comes to mind is I sort of plan out my weeks and my months, and I set a longer term goal, and I sort of work backwards and figure out, well, what do I need to be doing this week so that in a few months' time I'm achieving such and such. And one of the things that I actually do when I'm in that planning process is I do make little objectives or reminders really to reach out to my best buddies who are all over the world, and I find it really good. It may sound a little bit funny. Oh, you know, you're scheduling to sort of, you know, reach out to your friends and stuff. But in my case, it's just so easy that the weeks go by and the weeks turn into months, and then it's like, oh man, haven't spoken to my buddy for a couple of months. Whereas I get it in my calendar. I plan that I'm actually gonna, you know, be talking to them, catching up with them or whatever, and I actually do it. So it sort of forces me to keep finding the opportunity to tap into those things that really make me happy. I think last question that I really wanted to get your take on here was, when you're doing this process and when you're sort of fleshing out the things that make you happy, and maybe this is one that relates possibly more to like the whole work side of it, and especially online business, do you put any sort of deliberate thought into strengths and weaknesses, and you know, maybe getting help with things that you don't like doing? Like, for example, I'm just trying to I don't want to necessarily be out there creating a huge amount of written content, because I know that there are a lot of people that are a lot better than that than me, and I'd rather be doing something else. So I can sort of prop that up by hiring people to help me with that, experts. Or, for example, right now I'm in the process of getting a new office, and I'm going to be sort of building it from scratch essentially, and I've got lots of ideas, but I'm definitely not the best person to take those ideas and turn them into something that can work. So I'm deliberately getting help there. So I guess going back to the question, strengths and weaknesses, do you sort of look at them when you're going through this process?
Yeah, and I think particularly when it comes to setting up your work environment, you know, life, which is, you know, what you're talking about. There's a direct correlation between the things that we're good at and what we like to do, even if we don't see it. Most of the time, people don't like doing things that they're not very good at. Except me, I like to play golf. I'm not very good at golf, but but that's the exception that proves the rule. So, but it's true. And I think that people have a really hard time understanding what their true strengths and weaknesses are. And I think it's one of the most important things that you can nail in order to be successful. Because if you keep sort of hinging success upon the areas that you're weak, you're going to keep failing. You should rather make sure that success is hinged on the areas, you know, that you're strong on, and get help in the areas that you're weak. So I find that there's this sort of iterative process when you're evaluating your work life, to figuring out what you enjoy doing, what you don't enjoy doing, to what your weaknesses and strengths are. And they're sort of all just mishmashed in there. And asking what your strengths and weaknesses are, what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you like to do, what you don't like to do, starts to get you a better picture, even if you're not good at really understanding your strengths and weaknesses, of what they actually are. And you sort of come to the conclusion, it's like, oh yeah, I really do hate that. And oh yeah, I really suck at that. You know, and that's maybe why. And so I better make sure, because because we can't all be good at everything, and there are always things that are critical to be done to be successful, but you're not good at. They're just different for each of us, but they're always those things. So you got to figure out a way to get help. That's usually the only solution, is you get help for those things.
I think this has been really good, and I think if you're sitting there listening to this and you want to consciously build more of that happiness into your life, if you think like back to what Steve said at the very beginning, if you think about the things that you really enjoy doing and do more of those, and consciously think about the things that you'd rather not do as much of and do less of those, you'll be off to a good start. And then if you want to drill down a little bit more, and just to help you get started drilling down, consider those 5 sort of categories of geography, health and wellness, friends, family, work, hobbies, interests, or passion. And if you actually put pen to paper and start writing these things out, I think you'll be amazed at some of the things that can come out of it. And it will tie in nicely with what we spoke about in episode 12 of putting all of this together to try to build lifestyle freedom and your dream lifestyle, and ultimately more happiness into your life. So Steve, thanks so much for taking some time out here again today just to share a few thoughts. And I am going to get you back one day so we can talk more about the casino and the basement strategy that what six-year-old does. I guess you can't go to prison when you're 6 years old. Illegal gambling.
I have to figure out how. I know I was like about 12, because I know when we moved from that house. So actually, I must have been younger than that. But I know I wasn't older than 12. So I'll have to go back and figure that out.
You knew about counting cards or something, so you had to.
Yeah,
be
something. Who knows?
Anyway.
That idea. Oh God.
Anyway, like I say, so look, guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for being here, Steve. You can, as always, get the show notes by going to thegrowthbooth.com and looking up episode 13. You'll be able to download PDFs, transcriptions, summaries, and follow us on social media as well. You'll see links to our social media channel on thegrowthbooth.com. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode.